Welcome to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Blechman Show. Wednesday, March 22nd, and a chilly but sunny 36 degrees here in the New York metropolitan Long Island area. Here we are for our weekly news roundup show, and going across now to the United Kingdom. I'd like to say good afternoon to my senior correspondent, Rhea Bowe.
Hi, Dean. Hi, lovely listeners. Thanks for joining us again on the 22nd of March 2017. We've just gone past vernal equinox, or the spring equinox, where the hours of daylight are equal to the hours of nighttime. So enjoy the equinox. We're going into spring and some happy weather. I'll give you a quick warning about the newsreel that I'm doing today. There's a few hard-hitting stories in here, so put your fingers in your ears if you don't like it hard-hitting. But why? Because they need to be said, because no one's talking about them. I'm going to go straight in with one to keep it on the go. News about Brexit. I'm sure you've heard about it, but just to clarify it, it's officially going to be triggered on the 29th of March. It's all systems go. So it looks as though it's going to go on. The markets are going to go bananas, as I'm sure we can guess. It's trying to be dragged in the weeds by various different people. We have this lady called Nicola Sturgeon that's trying to separate Scotland from England and exploit the volatility that's going on, and she's becoming deeply unpopular. But we're all systems go on the 29th. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Rhea. I know it's breaking news here this morning, a lot going on out of CNN. U.S. military is helping U.S.-backed forces in fight for Tabqa and Dam in Syria. U.S.-supported fighters in Syria have begun a major ground offensive backed up by U.S. forces to retake a vital dam near Raqqa, Syria, a U.S. official told CNN on Wednesday. Tabqa Dam supplies electric power to a wide area of Syria, according to the U.S., and the area has been under ISIS control since the year 2013. The U.S. is backing Syrian Democratic Forces and Syrian Arab Forces. The U.S. military advisors are also on the ground with Syrian Democratic Forces, but not necessarily at the front lines. I mean, this is breaking news right now on CNN. A little bit earlier, Rhea, in North Korea. North Korean missile fired Wednesday exploded within seconds of a launch, according to U.S. Pacific Command. U.S. officials confirmed North Korea had attempted a missile near Kalma on the country's east side, but early reports suggest it failed. South Korea and the U.S. are aware of the missile launch, and to their knowledge, North Korea's missile was not successfully launched. South Korea's Ministry of Defense said in a statement that neither the U.S. nor South Korea have released information on what type of missile was fired or why it failed. The U.S. command said it was working with partners to assess it further. Those are the breaking news stories right now this morning, Wednesday, right now on this day at this moment right now. Back over to you, Rhea.
Okay, yeah, I've got some backstory on that a bit further down the newsreel. I'll go straight in with one. The news from the UK, the first 24-hour police drone goes into service this week. So yes, people in the UK, and I'm sure everywhere will be following, if this is successful, where we're going to have drones hovering over the top of us, monitoring what's going on, what is happening to the world. But I guess there's no stopping it. I'll move on to quite a hard-hitting one now. There's been a breaking story about a drug that women take during labour and during childbirth, as they've from conception to childbirth, and is called Primodos, spelled Primodos. It's manufactured by a company called Schering AG, which is a German company which is owned by Bayer, formerly IG Farben. Documents were destroyed and information withheld about a drug that may have deformed and killed babies in the womb. This story is broken hard. There's been a guy tracking it down for about 6 years, and Bayer is saying, hey, this has been going on before we ever bought the company and everything. So if you know someone and that word comes up, Promodos, just get informed, check it out. Is it good? Is it bad? According to the report, it's not that good, but it's definitely worth mentioning to someone. So watch out for Promodos. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Rhea. You know, it just goes on and on here this week, whether it's wiretapping, Russia hacking, Supreme Court Justice nominee Neil Gorsuch, the Affordable Care Act with Trump Care versus Obamacare. And then obviously something that obviously in the sports world that continues to be exciting these weeks, March Madness. But I wanted to bring up to you that I know that you have a love and passion for music, and I was really set back this weekend. The legendary father of rock passed away at 90 years old. Chuck Berry was the legendary father of rock and roll. He died at his home in Missouri. He was just a classic legendary composer, a guitar innovator. He was known for hit singles Johnny Be Good, Roll Over Beethoven, My Ding-a-ling, Maybelline, Sweet Little 16. I mean, the chart toppers that just endure to this day. I don't know if you were a big Chuck Berry fan, Rhea.
Not really, but I think you'd need to live on the moon not to know Johnny Be Good. He was an innovator, Dean, and he definitely pushed things forward. And one of the signs of sort of genius is people copy you, and plenty of people copied him. Right, I'm going to move straight over. Here's another quite hard-hitting one from the Middle East. Here's a few numbers and what's going on in the Middle East. This is news about Mosul, Iraq. It's a mess. I reported on it last week. The Western media is sort of backing out the generalization of it, but there's 100,000 plus people displaced, and there's all sorts of terrible things going on. So I'm not sure it's being reported on, or certainly not to the extent that it should be. Into Yemen. Yemen has 24.4 million people, of which 2/3 are starving to death. So it'd be nice to see someone, or, a wealthy Western world jump in and get some food to them. There's an organisation there, and it's just not getting through. And for some reason, the costs of getting it there have gone up by around 40%. Quick one on Syria. Proposals to send another 1,000 US troops into Syria. So that's gently ramping up again, the Middle East. Moving over to Somalia on a similar kind of famine thing, population 10.4. There's livestock laying on the floor. People are due to just fall down, and because they have no water and they have no food, and no one is really coming to the rescue, which leads me to think that when countries go in under the guise of help with military, which is sometimes questionable, this is not questionable. If the Western world gets in and gets food to these people in a terrible state, including Venezuela, they don't live to the end of the food queue. That would be unquestionably a good thing. Back to you, Dean.
Rhea, it just continues up on the Hill that Senate these last couple of days and last week, it just keeps going on. The Senate Intelligence Committee said there's no evidence that former President Obama wiretapped President Trump. If you remember earlier this month, Trump claimed that Obama ordered his phones at Trump Tower to be wiretapped leading up to the presidential election. He didn't say how he knew this, but since it's illegal for a president to order wiretaps on U.S. citizens, the allegations raised substantial flags. Obama said it definitely didn't happen. FBI Director James Comey allegedly asked the Justice Department to publicly deny Trump's claims. Meanwhile, the White House asked Congress to investigate. And the saga just continues to go on and on. Also this week, hearings continue, pretty much intensified with Supreme Court Justice nominee Neil Gorsuch. I mean, very substantial hearings and meetings on Capitol Hill. It just goes on and on. He is really being. It's going to be a miracle whether he clears. It's the confirmation hearings could last a couple of more days. He won't get the job unless he's okayed by the Senate Judiciary Committee and then by the entire Senate. It just goes on, and Democrats are really putting him under pressure. Back to you, Rhea.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoke about it before. 2017 is going to make 2016 look like a vacation. I think I said quite a few shows ago. And with the Trump thing as well, I mean, one of the concerns is 5 of his team are either ex or Goldman Sachs, and they're now starting to call it Government Sachs Bank. So what's going on there, whether it's a supreme move or not, I don't quite know, but I don't think it's going away. I think we're in for a long haul and it's going to be pretty painful. But with the whole spying thing, they all do it. You do it, we do it, they do it. Everybody's using this technology, some lawfully, some not, through the FISA court, whatever. So it's almost just like security theatricals, Dean.
Right. Well, a couple of comments that I want to say is, once again, going back to the Supreme Court Justice nominee, Neil Gorsuch. I mean, they are just grilling him right now this week over the controversial issues of abortion, death with dignity laws, and whether he considers Trump's travel ban to be constitutional. I mean, those are the biggest issues. And once again, it just goes on and on with FBI Director Comey. I mean, the hearings and the grilling over wiretapping and hacking over this recent presidential election. It's just taken up so much time here in Washington.
Yeah, I'm surprised people still switch on the news in a way to just get the sort of same theatricals that's going on. And we must all know that all the governments are at it one way or the other, you know, above board or below board. It's not new news, is it?
The President Trump, Rhea, he just continues to say that all this Russian business, everything that's going up with all this hacking, and did it influence the Trump presidential election win? I mean, Trump just continues to say this is fake news made up by the Democrats, that the Dems are mad, saying that Comey's been unfairly tight-lipped given how many headlines he made about the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails just before the election. So it's really, really intense here what's going on in mainstream media and in Washington.
Yeah, it's like reading sort of a newspaper from sort of, I don't know, November last year or something. It's nothing new there. Anyway, I'm going to move it on. News on bees. My lovely little bees. I love bees. The rusty-patched bumblebee has been given a dubious honour of being the first bee to make the endangered species list. The bee, which was once prominent feature of the Midwest, has lost 90% of its population, giving many cause for grave concern. The bees can't live through the GM products and the pesticides that go with it. It's gone on the endangered list. There's protests against it going on the endangered list from petroleum companies, housing companies, because they just want to steamroller everything and get on with making money. But they are a critical part to our ecosystem, and they are life-giving. So they often get overlooked. So there's the first bee that's gone on the endangered list. Dean, back to you.
Wow, amazing. Big news here this week is on the retail front, Rhea, that Sears and Kmart, giants in retail, there's substantial doubt that whether both of them can survive. I mean, after years of huge losses and store closings, the future officially is in doubt for Sears and Kmart. just amazing, just shocking. I mean, these here in the States, Rhea, Sears and Kmart, own the marketplace. It's just, I guess, just so much competition from Walmart and obviously online giant Amazon.
Yep. I feel that the high street, I don't know how long it will take, a decade or two, will be coffee shops and perishable goods, and there won't be a lot else. We've lost British Home Stores, which was like an institution. That's gone this end. And John Lewis's are cutting back because of the online competition. Right, I'm going to move it on to another one. Where are we? We are, right, news on Fukushima radiation. I reported on it, 6 weeks ago or something like that. There was a new statistics released from a scientist up near Oregon, okay? This information is from 2003 till 2005. He bought himself a Geiger counter because of Fukushima, the nuclear fallout. And he was getting clicks of 1 click every 7 to 8 minutes. And that was consistent through 2003 to 2005. Currently in the same location, which is 42 degrees north latitude, Fukushima is 37.7 degrees latitude. So from Oregon, if you drew a straight line out west with a few degrees of lift on it, 6,303 miles away is Fukushima. Okay, he did the same test through 2017, and it was coming up at 70 to 80 clicks a minute with spikes of 130 clicks a minute. Not good. They're not letting this one out the bag, but that is the statistics he's got. The guy's solid. He's a scientist. He's put the news out there. So rather than let this freak you out, because this radiation does terrible things, once upon a day, a Geiger counter would have cost you bucks, and plenty of them. With modern technology, you can buy something called a smart Geiger counter that plugs into your phone or into your laptop, and you can get readings. So if anybody's living off the West Coast, or you're concerned in the middle of America, we don't know how far this thing's spread. You can buy one for about $40, something like that. So, and then if it does come up with a relatively high reading, you can get informed and see what you can do about it. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Rhea. A big story out of the Washington Post and National Public Radio is Ivanka Trump's move to the White House raises questions about ethics. You know, when Donald Trump was elected president, his daughter Ivanka Trump said she would move to Washington, D.C., but not into the White House. Since then, she has often been photographed in key White House meetings with foreign leaders and cabinet members. Now she will have her own office in the West Wing, along with security clearance and government-issued communications devices. In her unpaid role, Ivanka will continue to be the eyes and ears of her father and provide candid advice as she has for her entire adult life. You know, this is intending to spend some time on initiatives that she cares about. But there is very serious alarm over Ivanka Trump's White House role and whether there's an ethics issue here. How do you feel about that, Rhea?
Yeah, I think that no matter if you sort of live in a world and you're part of the Trumps, everything you do is kind of hyper scrutinized. And if there's any cracks anywhere, they're going to go for them. I'm sure they're aware of that and almost used to it and maybe desensitized. But I'm not surprised that every little move they do is making headlines in the sort of circus that's going on your end, Dean.
Back over to you, Rhea.
Okay, no problem. All right, news on censorship. UK joining the censorship race. There's been news coming out that they're going to step up the whole censorship program because of the protection of the children. And they're now talking about possibly teaching pupils in school about propaganda. Oh my goodness, what is the world coming to? A lot of people wouldn't know propaganda if they were staring at it, but apparently they're considering teaching it in schools. And when I reported up on, I think it was the last show or the one before, about a campaign being launched against Trump, Putin and Assange, it has picked up this end. On mainstream news outlets, it's now leading the headlines, what's going on in the US instead of the UK. So I'm slowly watching this thing ramp up, and I think you are as well, Dean. Back to you.
It's breaking news this week is that the U.S. and Britain is restricting electronics on flights from Mideast countries. That's one of the headlines also this week, that airline passengers coming to the U.S. and Britain on direct flights from a number of majority Muslim nations must now place most electronic devices, including laptops, tablets, and cameras, in checked baggage under stepped-up security measures. I mean, the Trump administration and the government, the British government, said that passengers can still carry smartphones into the plane's cabin, but nothing larger. You know, these measures took effect Tuesday morning, and they cover about 50 incoming flights a day from 8 countries on the list: Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Morocco, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Amazing, just amazing. Also news this week is that Secretary of State Tillerson will visit Russia in April, but will miss a NATO meeting. Yesterday, the Dow fell by about 238 points. That's a drop of more than 1%. It was the biggest slide of the year and the biggest decline since the election. The broader S&P 500 was also down more than 1%. I mean, people are starting in Washington, and concerns that even within Trump's own party, that Republican leadership plans to repeal the Obamacare, lower taxes, spend big, concerned about infrastructure spending. There's a lot of concerns that are going on that affected the market and expected for the days and weeks ahead. Back over to you, Rhea.
Yeah, I'm watching it this end, Dean. I've forecasted it for some time, haven't I? With the Fed doing the tiny rate hike, it's affected the markets. I've got news on the S&P. I've been watching it for the last 10 days, and there is now volume on the sell and hardly any volume on the buy. And the volume has been on the buy since, for the last sort of 8 years, something like that. The volume's always been on the buying. The volume, which is what it shows people how many people are going on, are buying. And at the moment, in the last 10 days, those signs are saying that they're selling. People anticipated it with the Fed rate hike because the economy kind of won't take it. So I've got a bit of news on Bitcoin as well. I always give the Bitcoin percentages. This week, Bitcoin is down 15.7, and on the month is down 2.7. It's having a pullback, which is kind of expected, but there's also some news on the underground that there's going to be a blockchain fork put in the thing. So if you're thinking about Bitcoin, just take a back seat a second and research blockchain Bitcoin fork. If you type that in, you'll get some information about what I mean by that rather than me go into it. Have you got any sport news, Dean?
The sport news I have, and I mentioned it last week, Rhea, and especially for our listeners in Europe and around the world, that this country, America, is captured by college basketball for 3 weeks. And it's been nothing short of unbelievably exciting. It's called March Madness, also known as the Big Dance. And the news, over the weekend, there were some major upsets in the tournament that busted a lot of people's brackets. Gambling, Rhea, and Vegas is huge for this sports NCAA tournament called March Madness. It is huge, and there's been some major upsets that have busted a lot of people's brackets. On Saturday, the University of Wisconsin beat out the tournament's reigning champ, University of Villanova, in a 65-62 nail-biter. They made it happen by stealing a page out of Villanova's book and scoring in the last few seconds of the game. And then there was a game, one of my favorites, number 7 seed Michigan. The University of Michigan beat number 2 seed Louisville. Go Blue. And that was, another thriller. Number 7, South Carolina pulled out a huge win over number 2 Duke. And the underdogs just continue this week. What you call the Sweet 16 now. It's down to the final 16 teams, and for a champion to prevail sometime next week. So it's all very exciting here in America, that it gives people an opportunity, whatever stress they have in their life and all these things that are going on the political front. It is a huge 3 weeks for people to relax and enjoy and de-stress a little bit, unless you have a favorite team, and unfortunately, someone has to lose. So back over to you, Rhea.
Okay, I'm just going to close out with a bit of weather. It's a lovely day in the UK with around the kind of just under 60 Fahrenheit. It feels like spring has arrived. My closing thing is about censorship and this show. I've been looking back through, on average, we get about 65 people a week averagely listen to the news show. And I've seen a couple where it goes up to 65 and suddenly is hacked back down to a low figure. I've seen this. I mean, everybody's talking about it on YouTube. I can't believe they bother with this because there's not that many people listen to it. But I think I'm seeing it. Now, the only 2 people that have a motive to ramp up those views are myself and Dean, and we don't do it. So the rest leads me to like a censorship thing going on, because some of the news I report on, they don't want out there kind of thing. So what a great real-time experiment to see what happens. If you look back at some of the past weekly news roundup shows, you'll see some of the viewing figures are really low. One in particular. Now, I don't know whether someone's actually listening to this or whether it's the software that picks up on keywords, but the one that they hacked back from 70 down to 6, I was talking about Raytheon and the birth of the cybersecurity complex. And there's some other shows where I bring up topics that are a bit sensitive. So if you want the stuff that they don't want you to know, just look back through some of these shows and you'll see where the figures have been hacked back. And that's where they don't want that to be heard. But until then, people, spread the love and peace from the UK, and I'll see you next week. Back to you, Dean.
Rhea, thank you very much. Just a great weekly news update. Appreciate it. Rhea Bow in the United Kingdom. And I'd like to thank all our listeners for being with us today. And from all of us at the Dean Blechman Show, have a great day.
You've been listening to The Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.